Okay. We did for the last 3 classes now. We've been okay, Miss Goodness, you're welcome. Finally made it.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah. Okay. So the last 3 classes, we've been talking about OOP, and we've been touching on various features of OOP. And I sent some link to the channel so that we can use that link to also practice and get better understanding. There are many things concerning OOP. So we'll start the class on the note of question. So I want to welcome questions from what you've read and from your practice. Have you really understood the concept of OOP, or is there an aspect that you've not understood? I want to read out some key features in OOP that I don't think we should be stranger. It should be stranger. They should be strange to us. But if they are, we can raise questions. Then I will explain. Then you will now have to go back online and read more about that aspect. But I will explain and possibly do a little example so that when you are reading, you have better understanding. So we're talking of OOP, talk about access modifiers, we talked about encapsulation, abstraction, inheritance, method overloading, method overriding. We talk of okay, we didn't talk about virtual, but there's virtual, there's override, then there's base also. We didn't talk about base. Then there's polymorphism. We talked about polymorphism. Then there's seed. I think I mentioned seed. There's abstract. There's interface. We didn't talk about interface. So, and there's delegate and event. So next week we'll be talking about delegate and event. So, but for the ones I've mentioned, access modifiers, encapsulation, abstraction, inheritance, method overloading, method overriding, virtual, override, base, polymorphism, sealed, abstract, and interface. So do we all understand this? And if we don't, so that I can quickly shed little light on it, then we can go and read much more about them. So question to every one of us. Nobody's responding. Okay, you want me to call name? Okay, let me call name alphabetically. Mr. Yodele, I respond to the question. Is not responding. Okay, Miss Goodness, can you respond to the question?
I understand it to some extent, but what I've not really practiced, like I was not able to really practice, was that abstraction and polymorphism part of it. So that's my present challenge.
Okay. Okay. Mr. Justus, I know it's been quite a while, but you said you've been practicing. So, is there anyone strange to you? Is there anyone just an answer to the question, Mr. Justus?
Okay, so I'm not sure if I understand them, like abstraction and polymorphism that well. Okay, so the first video on OOP was actually an audio.
Oh, wow.
Yes, so that was it. So I actually I got the inheritance part of it. I was able to follow through, but I don't know if you mentioned some other things in the first video because I couldn't watch the first video because it was an audio that
Wow.
was on the YouTube page for the OOP for the OOP, yeah, the part one. It was an audio, so I couldn't follow through.
Wow. That must have
So
been a serious mistake.
so I'm not I'm polymorphism, abstraction, they sound a little, but I'm good with I'm okay with inheritance and some other concepts.
Okay. Mr. Atimileyin, any question?
No question for now. Although I've not really practiced, like do some real practical things on it, but when I read it, I actually understand it. I just maybe need to do some practical um things on it so that I can understand it more. But for now, I don't have any question.
Okay. Um, okay. I want to encourage us. No, the more you code, the more you know. Coding is not like um normal books. Understand? I know while you're reading, may assume you understand, and until you until you press the keypad, you won't know that there are some mistakes or there are some errors. So briefly, I can't be taking us through everything one after the other, but I want to plead with us. I think this is the first time I'll be pleading with us. I want to plead with us. Now, there's no way we can graduate from this boot camp without having a strong knowledge of OOP, because that's the strength of programming. That's the truth. Now, that's the truth. So, we have between now and Wednesday. I want I want us to engage ourselves. Now, I'll be sharing a particular link after this section. Now, it's a website that they explain and give examples on many of the, like virtually everything we've talked about. Now, I want you to read the OOP aspect first. I want you to read the OOP aspect first. I will share the page with us now. I'm coming. Then I'll use it to explain some of the, if I can, because of our time, because we actually have collections for today. So I don't know how many of us can see you can see my browser now, right?
Yes.
Okay. So I want to just quickly, if we use this first session to do that, I want to take us through the OOP. I will explain on the surface. So I'll give us an assignment of going to this particular website and study it more and practice it more. So now I'll be starting with, the website is Tutulane. I love they explained everything into they explained everything into two. So now I'll start with the concept of access modifier. Since we all understand inheritance, okay, I want Mr. Justus, can you explain inheritance for us so that I will use it to explain some other things? I want to be sure we are on the same page. So I want Mr. Justus to explain the concept of inheritance for us.
Okay, so the concept of inheritance is about a class trying to inherit all the properties of another class. So, for example, you have a class of probably a student, and then you have another class of probably an human being, like he gives. So, instead of declaring a name for every student again, you just make sure that the student inherits the class of the human being, such that you call the so that the name the field name or property name becomes a part of student. So that is how. So instead of repeating code and repeating different fields, repeating different properties and attributes for different classes, you just try to look at the classes that have the same attributes and then make sure that each of them are inheriting. So and then the inheritance can actually go from. So if a class inherits another class, then another class can inherit that class that has inherited another class. I don't know if you guys follow.
Yes.
So and be like that in the chain reaction. So
I love that. Wonderful. So now let's quickly touch access modifiers. Now, in those classes that we've created, when we create a class, what we have inside of them are attributes. And when I talk about attributes, you talk about methods, the fields, and the properties. Now, those methods, those fields, those properties. Now, I can decide not to make them accessible by some aspect of my program, by some sections of my program. Take, for example, I don't want a particular method to be seen, or I don't want anybody to see that method, or maybe a particular field. I want to be able to use that particular method or that particular feed only inside that particular class, then I can declare such method, such attribute, I can declare it private. So when anything I declare private, even if I inherit, even if such class is being inherited by a derived class, such class will not see those particular methods. So that's the concept of access modifiers. That means you want to modify access to some properties, to some methods, to some fields. So now, when I declare anything private, that means even if you inherit such class, you can't have access to any property or any method I call private. Now, if I call it public, then I give it easy access. That means it's not restricted. As you can read on my screen, that means there's no any restriction around it. Now, when I now call it protected now, when I call it protected, that means I want it to only be accessible by class that inherits it. I want it to be only be accessible by class that inherits it. That means, take for example, if I create a class called human and I give it a particular, I create a particular method and I call it protected. That particular method maybe is called it, like we've been using. It is the name of that method, but I call that method protected. Now, I can create an instance of human. That means I can say human, then Abayomi equals new human. Now, normally, having created an object of that class, I should be able to have access to every attribute. This is not inheritance now. I've just created an instance. I've created an object from that class now. And normally, I should have access to it. But due to the fact that I've named that method protected, I won't have access to it until I inherit. So any attribute you give the access modifier protected can only be accessed by class that inherits it. Can only be accessed by class that inherits it. Now, the last one is internal. When you're talking about internal, that means you're only limiting it to the current assembly. Now, when you're working on a project, you may have the cost to have as many assemblies. You can, inside a solution, you can have as many as 5 projects together. We'll just be creating one project and the like. So when I'm not talking of assembly now, when I make it internal, that means outside that particular project, you can't have access to that particular property. So let's see some examples on this website. As you can see, they created a class called user. These are the attributes. This is a field, this is a method, and we are familiar with this. So this is a class, this is another class now. So you can see here now, they created an instance of user. Now, with that they were able to have access to all that. So this is public now. They were able to have access to it because they've declared them to be public. Let's go to the concept of private now. I can see now the declared name as private, location as private, everything as private. Now, when we rub this, as you can see, say they are inaccessible due to the private specifier. Even if we are creating an instance of that particular class, because we've declared them as private, we cannot have access to it, but we can actually have access to it inside the class itself. So that's the concept of private. Now, the concept of protected now, until you inherit it, as you can see now, it declared them as protected. And it was trying to make use of those properties after creating an instance of them here. But as you can see, these are inaccessible due to protected specifier. So then the concept of internal also. The concept of internal also. You can still have access to it being internal. Even you are dealing with another project entirely. So that's the concept of access modifiers. That's the concept of access modifiers. So does anyone ask question so that we can quickly move on to, I just want to touch every one of them. So we can go and read more. You can go and read more about it, but that's the concept. So any question on access modifier?
No question.
Okay, so let's quickly go to encapsulation. So I will send this particular website. You can even see the link, so you can go and check You can go and check it. Now, the concept of encapsulation is you want to make some properties hidden from some section of the program. Now, I explained the concept of get and set last week. That's what encapsulation does. Now, maybe I want to create a particular field, and I only want, take for example, let me take for example, password. Password, yes, password. Now, when you develop an application and when you are developing it, the password is a field. You can make it a field, and you don't want people to have access to the password. Now, I can declare the password to only have a set accessor, and I'll remove the get aspect of it. That means you can only set the password. You can't get the password. That means you can only maybe insert the password. Maybe you now want to check what is inside the password, want to check the password. No. So in such way, I've protected such field. I've protected it. So that's the concept of encapsulation. You are making some section of the program private. Now, maybe I want to do some manipulations. Take for example, as you can see this example here, location. Maybe I want to check, maybe as you want to enter a particular details about location, I want to check location with something. Maybe I want to check my database if there's actually a particular location, if someone is already living in that same address you are trying to enter. I can just put some section of program inside, and before I put and here, I'll just check, okay, check database. Is there this location? Now, the location the person is trying to enter is being referred to as value. So I can just check, okay, is there anything like value inside my database yet? Okay, if it exists, then don't, as you can see, private location. This is where this is the original field itself. But this public now, this is the one we relate with. So now, take for example, now the person is trying to enter, I think, give a value to location now. Now that's it's trying to set. At that point, it's trying to set. Now, when it's trying to set now, what this line does is whatever value it's trying to set is equating it to this variable, which is this. That means you can't have straight access to this variable, which is the main thing. Now, take for example, the example I was giving that I want to check my database now. That means before I do this, I can actually check my database and I can actually decide, should it still equate the value to the original value? So that's the concept of encapsulation. And the concept of setting some variables to be private also explains encapsulation. So any question on encapsulation before I go to abstraction? Any concept of encapsulation? Any question?
No, I don't have any question.
Okay, so I want to use this first session to just address or can we just so that I don't have to touch inheritance again. We understand inheritance, right? Okay, which other one should I touch? Okay, now I mentioned last week that a class cannot inherit more than a class. That's the rule in C#. You can't inherit more than the class. Now, but there's what we call interface. It's a very, very powerful aspect of OP. There's what we call interface. Now, interface is just like a class, but interface does not carry any implementation. It just defines the expectations, just like abstract now. But you can actually inherit as many interface as you want. As you can see, this is an example of how to declare an interface now. It's just like a class, but it carries the name iInterface. And there's a culture in C#. When you are giving your interface name, just put I in front of it. You can decide not to put I, but it's good you put I so that you can differentiate an interface from a class now. So what the interface does is you can actually define some important methods, some important feeds that any class that inherits that interface must implement. Let me reframe. The concept of interface is just like a class, but when you inherit an interface, you must implement all the methods, all the feeds that have been declared inside the interface. So take for example, you let me look for an example. Okay, let's still use our normal example. Now, let me assume I want to create an interface of of Iman now. I create an interface called Iman, and I let Iman inherit Iman. Now, inside that Iman, I can put some important methods that a typical human being should execute. So I can put a method called void, maybe it. I can put a method, I can put, it may have a return type. I can put a method called void work. So they are important methods. So any class that inherits that inheritance, they must implement it. That means when you are inheriting it, you must create, in this case now, you must create a method called insert details. Let's see the example now. You can see user, when user is trying to inherit our interface, it makes sure it implements. So interface does not implement, just like class where you can put some manipulations and do one or two things and the likes. But the concept of interface, it does not implement. So your implementation is inside the class that will be inheriting the interface. So you can inherit as many interfaces, but you can't inherit more than a class. That's the concept of interface. So that's the concept of interface. So what other things concerning interface? I explained to us that interface, you can, as you can see here now, inheriting three interfaces. You can see the interfaces. They did not implement anything, but they just declare that, oh, interface name, you must have, if you are inheriting interface name, you must have a method called get name. If you are inheriting interface and location, you must have a method called get location. So that's the concept of interface. So let me touch one other one before our time goes on, and we'll go straight to what we are doing today, which is collection. So let me see if I can explain one other one in OOP. So let me explain the, okay, we understand the concept of overloading. I think I explained that last week. Overloading, the concept in whereby that's okay, the concept now, I was giving an example, and that's the concept of polymorphism, in which maybe you have a method, and that particular method, you are not too sure the kind of argument, kind of parameters that may be, take for example, you want to okay, let's assume a method that calculates people's that predicts when someone is most likely, okay, let's assume a pregnant woman now, when most likely the woman may give birth now. Now maybe the person may come and said, okay, all the details you have is just the person's age and when the person took in. Now you can write a method, maybe another person just come with only age, maybe another person comes with only when she took in. So now you can write as many methods with the same name, but with different number of parameters. So you can write, let's say, okay, let's assume the name of the method is get okay, just look at this example. You can see this example, right? Do we understand what I'm trying to explain from this? So we have a method called add numbers. So you can, normally it should complain that there is a problem here because we are creating a method with the same name. But this will require that there is a change in the number of parameters. There's a change in the number of parameters. Then this is the concept of polymorphism. So it depends on your program. So you may not necessarily have to implement this, but you may have to implement this if you have cause for this. If you have reason to have stuff like, just like the example I gave. So you can actually implement that using polymorphism. So as you can see, add numbers, he created two methods called add numbers. So as you can see now, when it was making use of the add numbers here, There is a particular one that it's allowed, it's just submitted only 2 information. There's another one is submitted 3 information. See the same method, the same methods, but he has written them in different formats to attend to them in different ways. So that's the concept of polymorphism. So before this section, and this section will be ending in the next few minutes. Before this section ends, so I will re-emphasize again. I'll be copying this particular link now, and I'll go and paste it on our Slack channel, and that will be our assignment. I want us to go through everything that is under OOP and practice also, and practice also, and practice also. So I want us to go through everything and practice. I want us to go through everything and practice. So practice everything. Then if you now have questions, raise them. I know we are not too familiar with the concept of base. So I want us to go and read it and raise questions on them. The concept of virtual and override. Now let's take, for example, imagine you create a method and you want to create an updated version of that method in the class that inherits that particular class, just like this example. Now, in this class, you have class users. There's a method called getInfo, and this person wants to create an updated version of that method. He is inheriting from users, but he wants to create another updated version. So what he has to do is, while he was creating that method inside the first class, you should just call it virtual. So when you use override in the class and inherit it now, the class will, whenever you create an object of this particular class and it calls getInfo, it will come and implement this and not this now. So he has actually written a code to override this now, despite the fact that it's inheriting from users. So that's the concept of override, the method overriding. That's the concept of method overriding. So, and it's also aspect of polymorphism also. So I will expect us to go and read and practice everything that is under OOP. That will be our assignment. So that next week we'll just start. I'll just introduce us to. We'll do delegate an event. Then we'll now from there enter Windows application, which is basic for every .NET developer. Window-based window applications, which is desktop applications. So I'll just introduce us on the surface. Although there's more to it, so I'll just introduce us. Then the week that follows, we'll just do a single class and we'll talk about the various sections we want to branch into. Then we'll be giving professional advice on how best to go about it and how to learn fast. So that's for this section. So the next section will be starting collection. I'll be touching that very, very well. We'll be starting collection in the next session. So any question, please? Any question? Nobody is talking. Any question? Mr. Edeli, any question?
No, I don't have a question. I have an issue with the network, but I just got a constant line, like a stable network now, so I don't have any question.
Okay. Miss Goodness, Mr. Justus, Mr. Timile, any question?
No question, sir.
Okay, ma. Mr. Justus, any question?
No questions, I'm okay.
Okay, Mr.
No.
Timile, any question?
No question for now, sir.
Okay, so please, I want you to promise me, are you guys going to do this assignment? I need to, because we actually need it. Please, I want you to do this assignment. So I'm sorry, I want to, don't let me say I want to force you guys, but you have to do this for me. I want you to say I promise. So starting from Mr. Simile, so I'm sending the link to the channel now. So I want to hear individual I promise. Okay, so Mr. Simile, you are starting for us. So are you going to do the assignment? I'm sending the link now.
The assignment is for us to read it and do the exercises, Abi.
Yes, you won't submit to me.
Okay.
Okay, so
I
I'm okay.
promise.
Okay, Mr. Ayodele.
Yes, I promise to do the assignment.
Okay, Mr. Justice.
Yes, I'll work on it.
Okay, Miss Goodness.
Hopefully, if my system functions well, to be able to practice it, but I'll read it. I'll read everything.
Okay. So I'm sending the link now. I've sent it now. So I only want us to read the OOP aspect. OOP aspect. So next week we'll touch some other things we've not touched. So or just you everything under OOP. I know there will be you will see some things that you don't really understand. Just take your laptop and practice. So if you are still having issue understanding it, let's just come and scatter the Slack channel before Wednesday. Then we'll trash it out among ourselves. So thank you so much. So I will end this section now. I will end this section now. Then we log in back, then we'll start collection. So collection that we'll be talking about today, we're talking about a situation whereby the data types we'll be working with so far. You're talking about integer, double, string, that one, that one I'll be talking about. Okay, sharp. There's also sharp. There's sharp. Now, integer, we know that when we create a variable, that means it can only store one integer. Now, what about the situation whereby you want to store a list, you want to store a collection of something, collection of integers, collection of double, collection of strings, collection of objects, collection of objects. Now, I want us to understand the concept of object. When we create class and we say we create an object from a class, it's just the way you can create you can create collection out of that object. So we'll be seeing some example in the next class when I'll be looking at. So how do we create collections? What are the various way of create collections? What are the different types of collections? What is generic collection? What is non-generic collection? So we'll be doing that. So I will end this session. I will not want it to mix up with the other session. So in the next 3 minutes, please let's log in back for collection. So thank you so much. I want to end this section.